Hey there, everyone. So, this is something a little bit different. I wanted to bring to you guys and gals a little voiceover clip. And I just want to talk about what's happening here. This is a surf session from earlier this week, actually. And I was taking a rest day and doing some filming from a really good vantage point. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about strategy, reading waves, and dealing with crowds. As you can see, there were some really good waves today. There's some good crashes happening. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I'm seeing and what are some of the things that can help you. One of the things that I really wanted to touch on in this piece is one, I invite you to check out where the peak is, where the peaks are, because there's many peaks here. So I'd like you to kind of notice there's a clear sets. There's a set coming out back right now. And there's also some inside waves. So noticing that the bigger waves, the bigger sets coming out back. There are some people that aren't in particularly position for that wave, so no one actually caught it. Except for this person here waiting on the inside was able to catch this next section and ride the left all the way, almost all the way down. So what I wanted to kind of just look at is what are some of the things we can do? Okay, this is something else I wanted to talk to you guys about as well. So if you notice here in this part of the clip, there is a longboard floating without her owner, and that person's obviously surfing without a leash. So surfing without a leash it's important to have leash. If you can't control your board, if it's a bigger day, it is important to use the gear. I know, there's pieces about style and all that kind of stuff, but it is important, especially here. There were more people in the water before I started filming. So there were quite a few people. There's probably at least 15, 20 people here surfing this spot. And it is important to be careful and be aware. The other thing I kind of wanted to point out, you can kind of see here, everyone's a little bit spread out and everyone's quite far out. If you notice some of the waves that are coming in closer towards me, closer towards the camera, there's some smaller waves that are breaking inside. And the people that are way out there aren't catching some of these waves. And some of these waves, they look pretty small. However, this is where I kind of want to talk a little bit about strategy. Here's a really good example here. You have someone sitting on the inside. They're on a shortboard, so they weren't able to catch that wave. However, if you were on a longboard, that would have been a perfect wave, perfect little inside peeler to catch. I cut a lot of the clips out, so you can't actually see the time in between the waves. And the sets, I mean. So here's another perfect little peeler that is totally empty. So if you are one of those people that maybe you're learning, maybe you don't want to catch the biggest waves of the set, here are some strategies that you can actually look at. When you go to the beach, actually look at the whole picture. Sit there on the beach, look out at the ocean, give yourself a good half an hour, 20 minutes. To really look at the whole thing. Here's another little small peak that's coming in on the inside. Again, it's not going to break where all the people are. But if you're sitting here on the beach, you can see it's a perfect small longboarding wave. It's got enough juice. It's got some nice shape to catch it. And then it kind of crumbles. So these are some of the steeper inside waves on the left here. So you were able to see that shortboarder was quite a lot further in than the people that are sitting waiting on the outside for some of the bigger sets. So sometimes we're sitting on the outside because everyone else is sitting there. But if we want to actually maximize our wave count, but also really our enjoyment, if we're trying to avoid the crowds, here we've got a relatively mellow inside. We've got 2 people just sharing the peak on that last wave. But here you've got kind of in between the bigger sets, you can see some of these smaller little peaks coming out the back and then breaking a lot closer to me. Right, so here's one that's breaking right now. Here's another one. So I just invite you to kind of observe the whole picture. So if I was on a longboard, I just want to talk a little bit about strategy, because obviously one of the advantages of being on a longboard is that you have a lot of paddle speed and paddle power. And I find for me, when I ride bigger boards, I definitely can increase my wave count because I can capitalize on all of these small, so there's somebody going for that wave and he missed it. But, you know, there's another 2 waves behind that one. And the people that are sitting way out in the back and in front of the main peak are out of position for these smaller inside rollers that are coming through. Which are perfect. They're perfect for nose riding. They're even, you know, this is one good example of that 3rd wave wasn't actually even a smaller wave. This is a friend of mine who is on a shortboard who was able to catch that left. So that also had a right. So if you are trying to find ways to maximize your wave count and capitalize, where are the waves actually breaking, right? A lot of the times we don't look at the whole picture. One of the reasons why I wanted to do those videos about where the peak is and how to find the spot is I really want you to start to recognize where the spots are. And there's more than one. You know, here's one wave that's going left and right, again, splitting the peak. Someone on a longboard, my friend on his boogie board, going left. All the way, I think he actually makes it all the way to the end on this one. So, you know, if we often automatically kind of just paddle out without really developing a strategy. And so one of the reasons why I think reading waves is so important is one, of course, to put ourselves in proper positioning for the wave. But the second piece is developing a strategy. And if you watch any competitive surfing, you might sometimes hear competitors talking about this before they go in, but they'll watch the waves and they want, you know, I'll do this too. I'll sit on the beach, I'll watch sets roll through. Maybe there are people, maybe there are not people, maybe it's crowded, maybe there's one guy in the water. But the key is not to make our decisions and not to base our decisions based on what other people are doing and where other people are sitting. What I really want you to start to develop is a sense of reading the waves and then deciding, where do I actually want to sit? So for example, if you're like a new or beginner surfer and, you know, this day it was actually pumping pretty well, you know, for example, if I'm kind of new surfer, I don't want to put myself in the big sets. I don't want the big waves. I kind of want the small, medium-sized waves that are coming through in between the bigger sets. So as a strategy, I want to think about, first of all, how can I really know how to manage my board, right? Like that's the first things first, is we need to know how to manage our board so that we can be able to actually sit through and get through those bigger sets that are going to come out back. So we can be able to like survive them with some grace and without doing any damage or harm to ourselves or others, right? So this is where board control is really important. The second piece is we need to figure out, where do I actually want to surf? Where do I want to sit? One of the tricks that I really love to do is actually, I'm looking out at the ocean and I'm looking for some sense of consistency. I'm looking for the shape of the wave, I'm looking for the peaks, and I'm looking for also that there's enough steepness in the peak so that it will have enough kind of punch for me to be able to really get into the pocket. And then if I'm seeing, you know, one particular spot or a couple particular spots that have that particular consistency, then I want to look behind me and I want to look at well, is that particular peak directly in line with something on the beach? So for example, in this particular spot, there's a couple of rocks that I know that the wave always kind of breaks in front of the rock. And particularly when it's small, if I'm on a shortboard and I need a little bit of punch, I'll often position myself either beside or in front of, like really close to one of the rocks. And I know where it is based on, sometimes it's a little bit deeper when the tide is high, so I can't see it. But what I can do is I can look over to the beach and I know that there's this palm tree right behind the rocks, the cliffs. And that palm tree is in direct alignment with the rock. So I can start to map out what the waves are doing, where the peaks are, based on what I'm looking at on shore. And so then I can start to kind of check in with where the peaks are. Am I putting myself in the best position? Because sometimes, you know, when we paddle out, it looks a lot different from the perspective from when we're in the water than from when we're out on land looking at the water. You know, this is one of the reasons why sitting in the position that I'm sitting here, which is kind of on a cliff face directly overlooking the surf break, such an awesome vantage point. And I highly recommend, if you have a vantage point of your local surf break, to spend some time actually just watching waves. Here's another really awesome kind of inside peeler. You can see the right is just beautifully running all the way. This is a wave that is, it's going to close, but it was a nice long ride. So for me on my longboard, I'm often looking for that kind of wave. I'm looking for not necessarily the biggest waves, but I'm looking for the nice rolling, long, peeling, juicy little waves. Here's a nice little left that this guy is dropping into. Shortboard technique, a little bit different than longboard technique in terms of keeping and developing speed, of course. So one of the things I just wanted to touch upon is really what's the strategy? The other thing I wanted to note is for the crowd, probably only half of the people that are in the water right now are actually catching waves. So that's the other thing I wanted just to note is, you know, reading waves is really important. It's really important to start to understand and read the ocean. But the second part that I think is really important in developing a good surf strategy is reading people. And we can actually start to look at that too. We can look at who's catching waves, where are they sitting, who's missing waves, where are they sitting, what's happening. So starting to just really develop our sense of observation is really, really, really helpful. It's one of the ways that I find for me I can really increase my wave count. It's also one of the sneaky little strategies I use to avoid people. Because the more that you understand the ocean and the waves, the better you're able to position yourself. Other people, you have to remember, aren't necessarily, they're trying to kind of do the same thing, but we all kind of struggle with the same psychological stuff. Like we all struggle with that same, sometimes crowd mentality where we'll see everyone sitting in the same spot, so we'll just kind of congregate around other people. Or sometimes it can be the reverse. Like we can see other people that are congregated around where the waves are breaking and they're catching waves. And maybe we get a little bit intimidated, and so we don't put ourselves there. We kind of put ourselves way off on the side, and we end up just watching other people catch waves our whole session, rather than actually kind of putting ourselves in a good position. But what I really would like to invite you to do is a couple fold things here. One, start to really hone in and develop your power of observation. Watch waves. Watch thousands, hundreds of thousands of waves. Watch surf videos and this is one of the reasons I wanted to actually track some longer footage, because I really wanted to actually give you a bit of a better picture of what the entirety of a surf session is. There's the set waves, there's the waves in between the set waves, and starting to actually read a rhythm and a pattern so that you can develop a strategy for yourself to really maximize your enjoyment of the ocean. So if you like this kind of video, let me know. If you guys have questions, please feel free to comment below. And yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to hear any questions you might have about anything particularly that you saw in this video that you want me to kind of dive a little bit into. I want to know about what your surf strategy is. Do you struggle with wave count? Do you struggle with kind of dealing with the crowd? And what are some of the things that you do? What are some of the things that work for you and what doesn't work for you? And let me know. I'd love to do more of these for you. So let me know what you think of this format, and sending you all tons and love from Mexico. Mwah.